Sometimes life can get so hot and dry, and I don't know about you, but I'm getting a little bit tired. I don't know what's about to happen. Really, I don't know what's going on now. Will I survive? I know he's got a plan inside. He's up there keeping it a secret. It's not for me to know yet. So until the day I know it, I'll have to wait and he'll surprise me. He's up there keeping it a secret. It's not for me to know yet. So until the day I know it, I'll have to wait and he'll surprise me.
My God is watching over me. I feel his love pouring down upon me. So I know that he's always there. Why is life so scary? Every day new things pop up and scare me. And even though I know God's in control, his plan is not for me to know. He's up there keeping it secret. It's not for me to know yet. So until the day I know it, I'll have to wait and he'll surprise me. He's up there keeping it a secret. It's not for me to know yet. So until the day I know it, I'll have to wait and he'll surprise me. Oh,
Life gets hard, oh life gets tough. So thank you, Lord, for your love.
oh, it may not get better, but right now I need to believe that your secret is good.
He's up there keeping it a secret.
It might be bad,
But it could be good.
surprise me.
Surprise me, Lord.
He's up there keeping it a secret. It's not for me to know yet. So until the day I know it, I'll have to wait and he'll surprise me. He's up there keeping it a secret, yeah. It's not for me to know yet. I'll have to wait and he'll surprise me. Surprise me. Oh, surprise me, Lord. Oh, he's keeping it a secret. Ooh.
Good morning. Welcome to New Hope Community Church. Thanks for tuning in for worship today on our live stream. My name is Jeremy, and one of my primary responsibilities here at New Hope is our music. Now, we're known around these parts for being a little on the loud side, but that's how we like it. As you wait for the live stream to begin, I hope that you enjoy listening to the countdown. That's some of our original music. And if you'd like your very own copy of our album, we can make that happen. Just send me an email and let me know. Hey, thanks again for being here. We'll be starting soon.
From stable to a cross, his blood was shed to bear the cost. From a cross to a crown, to our knees we will bow down and worship. He was the way in a manger. He was the way for my life to be set free. Every wrong he would make right. Every darkness turned to light. He was the way. He was the way. You are the way. You are the way in a manger. of hope. It brings you near. May your unfailing love reach and teach through us as we put new hope in you.
Good morning. Welcome to New Hope Community Church. It's good to have you here. And if you're new, we do want to give you a heads up. We are not what most people expect in a church. When we started in 2002, Loudonville didn't need another church. It needed one that was different. Our goal is to provide a safe and comfortable space for you to meet Jesus, no matter the circumstances life has you in. So feel free to hide behind that cup of coffee, or soft pretzel, or even that computer screen if you're tuning in online. We're glad you've joined us today. Engage in worship however you feel comfortable. Whenever you're ready to get more connected, stop and chat with someone at the Hub, or plan to join us for New to New Hope on the first Sunday of any month. We'd love the opportunity to meet you and tell you some more about who we are. For now, we want you to know that there's childcare you can trust, where your kids will learn about Jesus on their level. Find a guy in a bright orange guard shirt if you need help finding the right location. There are refreshments for purchase in the cafe, as well as free coffee, which you are more than welcome to bring into the auditorium with you. And if you'd like to sing along with the songs, don't worry. We're going to play our music loud enough for you to hide in the crowd. For those of you who want to worship God through giving, there are tall red boxes near the doors. Drop your check or cash envelope here. Or for a digital method, use the giving kiosk in the lobby. Giving online is an option for everyone, even from home. Simply choose Donate from the menu on our website, or scroll to the bottom of the screen while on any page and click the green dollar sign. Text to Give is a simple digital option. Just text the donation amount to 84321. Thank you to all of you who continue to trust God in this way. Your support allows ministry to happen in huge ways. All right, folks, it's time to get this party started. Our intent is to glorify Jesus in all that we do this morning, and we hope that you feel welcome to be a part of it. This is New Hope.
Now the darkness fades into new beginnings as we lift our eyes to a hope beyond. All creation waits with an expectation to declare the reign of the Lord our God. We will not be moved when the earth gives way, for the risen one has overcome. And for every fear, there's an empty grave, for the risen one has overcome. Now the silence breaks in the name of Jesus, as the heavens cry, let the earth respond. Creation shouts with the voice of triumph to declare the reign of the Lord our God. We will not be moved when the earth gives way, for the risen one gives way for the reason one is overcome. And for every fear, there's an empty grave for the reason one is overcome. We will not be moved when the earth gives way for the reason one is overcome. And for every fear, there's an empty grave for the reason one is overcome. Before the day, before the light, before the world revolved around the sun, God on high stepped down into time and wrote the story of his love for everyone. He has filled our hearts with wonder, so that we always remember. You and I are made to worship. You and I are called to love. You and I are forgiven and free. When you and I embrace surrender, you and I choose to believe. You and I will see we were meant to be. All we are, all we have, is all a gift from God that we receive. Brought to life, we open up our eyes to see the majesty and glory of the King. He has filled our hearts with wonder, so that we always remember. You and I are made to worship. You and I are called to love. You and I are forgiven and free. You and I embrace surrender when you and I choose to believe. You and I will see we were meant to be. The rocks cry out, even the heavens shout at the sound of his holy name. So let every voice sing out, let every knee bow down. He's worthy of all our praise. You and I are made to worship. You and I are called to love. You and I are forgiven and free. You and I embrace surrender. You and I choose to believe. You and I will see. You and I are made to worship. You and I are called to love. You and I are forgiven and free. You and I embrace surrender. You and I choose to believe. You and I will see we were meant to be. Amen. Amen. Hey, you can have a seat for a minute. faithfulness of God, the still inside the storm, the promise of the shore. I trust the power of your word, enough to seek your kingdom first, beyond the barren place, beyond the ocean waves. When I walk through the waters, I won't be overcome. When I go through the rivers, I will not be drowned. My God will make a way, so I am not afraid. You keep the promises you made. There isn't one that is delayed, so I will not lose heart. Here I will lift my arms and start to sing into the night. My praise will call the sun to rise, declare the battle won, declare that it is done. When I walk through the water, I won't be overcome. When I go through the river, I will not be drowned. My God will make a way, so I am not afraid. When I am in the fire, I will not feel the flame. I'll stand before the giant, declaring victory. My God will make a way, so I am not afraid. Before me, behind me, always beside me. No shadow, no valley, where you won't find me. No, I am not afraid. Before me, behind me, always beside me. No shadow, no valley, where you won't find me. No, I am not afraid. No, I am not afraid. When I walk through the waters, won't be overcome. When I go through the rivers, I will not be drowned. My God will make a way, so I am not afraid. When I am in the fire, will not feel the flame. I'll stand before the giant, declaring victory. My God will make a way, so I am not afraid. My God will make a way, so I am not afraid. No, I am not afraid. No, I am not afraid.
Amen. You can have a seat. Hey, I don't know about you, but I ask God for some pretty silly stuff. And then there's times where I ask God to do some stuff that's maybe legit, maybe a little bit legit. And then there's sometimes that I ask God for things that I think even God himself would laugh at or think is impossible and that kind of thing. And a couple weeks ago I was in the car and I heard this song and it hit me and it broke my heart because I'm a doubter, and there are times where I've asked God for something that I just know he's not going to come through on. And so I have to remember every day and remind myself that the God that I ask those silly things from and those crazy things from, it's the same God that delivered Daniel from the lion's den. And it's the same God that made Joseph, the king of Egypt. And it's the same God that gave Mary a virgin Jesus. So I want you to listen to these words, and I hope it breaks your heart in a good way. And I hope you understand what I'm talking about when you hear this.
I've been here before, my heart feels so weak. Got this weight upon my chest, and I can't stop forgetting, my God, that you've never left. You're right here with me. Still, I'm convinced you're hiding. Oh God, would you remind me that you're still just as good as when I met you. You're still just as kind. Don't let me forget that you're still the same God that led me through the fire. You're still the same God who separates the waters. Come do what only you can do. God, I need you.
You've done this before, will you do it again? 'Cause the waves are all around me. It feels like I'm drowning. My God, will you still reach down and give me your hand?
'Cause even when I'm doubting, your love, it still surrounds me. Oh, and you're still just as good as when I met you. You're still just as kind. Don't let me forget that you're still the same God that led me through the fire. You're still the same God who separates the waters. Come do what only you can do. God, I need you. Oh, and I will build an altar and stack it stone by stone. 'Cause every Ebenezer says I've never been alone. My faith will surely falter, but that don't change what you've done. 'Cause every Ebenezer points to where my help comes from. And I will build an altar, stack it stone by stone. 'Cause every Ebenezer says I've never been alone. My faith will surely falter, but that don't change what you've done. 'Cause every Ebenezer points to where my help comes from. 'Cause every Ebenezer points to where my help comes from. You're still just as good as when I met you. You're still just as kind. Don't let me forget that you're still the same God that led me through the fire. You're still the same God who separates the waters. Come do what only you can do. Oh, come do what only you can do. And I will build an altar, stack it stone by stone. 'Cause every Ebenezer says I've never been alone. My faith will surely falter, but that don't change what you've done. 'Cause every Ebenezer points to where my help comes from. Oh, every Ebenezer points to where my help comes from. Amen.
I love that question, don't you? What are you soaking in? It's so important for us to wrestle with this, because the answer, like we talked all week last week, is more than we tend to think, more than we believe, and especially maybe this one's even the most true, more than we're willing to admit, right? Like, we don't want to admit that this, that, or the next thing is impacting us in the way that it does. And so we kicked off this series last week by letting God tell us this from Proverbs 23:7. God says, as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. Right? So the people and the places and the things that you and I are consistently around, the things that we allow in our eyes and in our ears, at some point are going to trickle down to our hearts, and they're going to cause us to become. Right? We're gonna change based on the things that we're around, the people that we're around, the things that we consistently see and hear. Here's how we said it last week. If you let things in and you let things stay, they will determine who you become. Right? If you let things in and you let things stay, they're going to determine who you and I are becoming. Why is this true? Because we said you are more absorbent than you think you are. Right? Like, we're all more absorbent. Oh, no, not me. Yes. Right? Yes, you, because God says so. And so I would love for you guys, I said something last week, if there are ways that this has been true for you, where you have discovered that you have been influenced, that you are absorbent, when I'm around this, or when I listen to that, or when I do something, it impacts me, it changes me, good or bad, really doesn't matter. I'd love for you to share that with me in the coming weeks. That'd be great, just to sort of let us know. I've gotten a little bit of feedback so far to that question. And basically, it centers on 1 Corinthians 15:33 that says this: do be misled. Bad company corrupts good character. Right? You can have great character. You can be an awesome person. You can have lived well your entire life, right? But you start keeping bad company, and that's going to change who you are. Again, like the couple stories I've heard so far related directly to this. So even if you've been a good person, if you start spending time around questionable people, you are going to become more and more questionable. It's just how it works. And we said it this way last week too, right? This is kind of the point. You are a sponge. You're a sponge. I'm a sponge. We are all sponges. We gave out these sponges last week. Do we have more of these kicking around, Shelly? If anyone's here that didn't get a sponge, if you didn't get a sponge and you want a sponge, we have more sponges. And last week, there was a parent who was walking out between gatherings just beaming. And I said, hey, what's up? And they said, my kid watches from college, and they texted me and said, hey, can you get me a sponge? How cool is that, right? Like that from hours away, like others care, that others want these. And I encouraged us all, right, to take these and to place them in a high traffic area, right? Like somewhere where we're going to see it all the time, is this reminder that you and I are sponges. Maybe in a high temptation area, right? A place where we're tempted to soak in and absorb things we know are not good for us, we know God doesn't want, and so we place this there as kind of this reminder that we are absorbent. We can't just listen to or see whatever we want without it impacting us, and that instead of soaking in some of the things we soak in, we need more Jesus, right? Like that is the point. And so soak in less of everything else and absorb more of Jesus. Now, I told you guys this last week too, and again, I told you I was going to talk about it a bunch. But 5 years ago, we were $1.1 million in debt, all facility-related debt. As of about a month and a half ago, that number had gotten down to $385,000, which was really cool, right? And we sold the Ridge 2.5 weeks ago for $300,000. We put another $15,000 with it. So I told you last week that we only are now, like, all of our debt as a church in the whole wide world is $70,000, which is cool, right? It's so cool. And then I told you, like, everybody loved that, but then I said, I actually believe we can pay it off between now and the end of the year, or at least between now and our annual meeting, which is the last Sunday in January. I know, like, you guys already have that chiseled into your calendars. You're planning to be here. Thank you for that. But I said, because if we do this, right, three things happen. We free up resources. Instead of spending $13,000 a month on mortgage, or $10,000, or what we have been recently, $8,000, we can spend all that on ministry and making a difference, right? And we talked about what kind of difference are we going to make? Because again, everybody, let's just go like build huts in Haiti, right? Huts in Haiti, we'll put a big thing. No. We want to multiply spaces everywhere where people can come as they are, encounter Jesus, and leave different. We said we think we can plant 5 churches every 10 years that are healthy and sustaining if we invest in this way, because doing this helps us to be able to change the world for Jesus together. I love that. I love that Jesus, that he can, he will, and he does use you and me, right? And he can do that in some respects individually, but when we come together, right, when we join hearts and hands for the cause of Jesus, even more things can happen. And I just love that when we are faithful and we're consistent in that, how it changes people near and far. How when we have more time and resources and capacity, how we can bless people close to us and people sometimes in places we've never seen. We talk a lot as a church about how our priority are those people who don't yet know Jesus, right? We want to create a space that makes sense to them. And that's true, but I just love it when people walk in here. It happens all the time. Someone last week came up to me who loves Jesus and has loved and served Jesus for a long time and just said, hey, Rob, being here today saved my life. That's a pretty cool thing, right? When God uses us together to do that in people's hearts and minds and lives. And again, I just think there's far too many spaces out there where you have to, take 1,000,000 steps and tick 1,000,000 boxes and believe 1,000,000 things before you can ever belong. And just creating safe spaces where people can belong and be loved and encounter Jesus makes a huge difference. Guys, thank you so much for being a church like that. So cool. So I said all opportunity, or no, all opportunity, no obligation, right? Feel no undue pressure. But even just after the stuff that came in last week, which was just people who normally give, I don't know if there was any extra or special gifts, but I wanted to show you this. You guys remember, anyone like when you were a kid, maybe your church was trying to pay something off, and they always had a thermometer? Remember that? Sometimes you do that at Vacation Bible School. Is the blue team going to bring in more money? Is the, or whatever. The boys or the girls? So I made a little thermometer to show you guys this, but this is cool because I don't know that there were any extra or special or unique gifts, but look at this. Our thermometer just has a little bit in it, and now instead of $70,000, it's only $67,991.40. Woo! So I'm going to keep showing you the thermometer. And pray with me that we're not going to get some blood from the blood drive and pour that into our thermometer. I don't think that works that way. But anyway, because we want generosity, right, to be one of the things we soak more of into ourselves, because that's consistent with the heart of Jesus. It'll impact us. It'll impact our families. It'll impact our communities. And it'll impact our world if we become more generous. Okay, so today, as we're in week 2 of this series, I want to talk to you about what it looks like to be a backseat driver. All right, now some of you I know, you're like, should we even talk about this? I still remember this was, maybe 20 years ago, I heard a comedian talk about this, and they were talking about the design of automobiles, and they were talking about how the steering wheel really just in the way, and the comedian said, they really ought to put the steering wheel in the back seat because that's where the people who know how to drive are sitting anyway. right? I will confess right now, I am a terrible backseat driver, and it doesn't matter if I'm in the back seat or just in the front seat, but not by the wheel. And for whatever reason, I don't know if this is anybody else's experience, it becomes exponentially worse when it's my spouse who's driving. Does anyone else have that experience where you're probably not a good, some people lying out there to save themselves, like you're not good at it anyway, but when it's your spouse, somehow it becomes worse. That's all I'm saying about any of that. So there are, or there can be, like perks and pitfalls to backseat driving. And so I want you to think about that as you check out a little video that we put together. And I just want to say, for those of you tuning in online, you might have thought this last month too in our Puppet Master series when you watched the sermon lead-in video. It had this really cool song behind it, and you're like, I didn't hear the song. Hey, sorry about that. There's copyrighted songs that if we play the audio, they will get flagged. And so sometimes we can't do that. So if you're online and you're like, hey, that was a cool little video, but I didn't hear anything, it's because we got to mute your video. But just think, Toby Mac's song, Backseat Driver. Now check this out. Woo! I'm still in the dark. There we go. Some of you are like, we like it better that way, right? It's good. So I love that, right? Just a couple quick little thoughts from that. Sometimes, isn't it nice just to be in the back seat and it's spacious and it's comfortable? And I love those words. There are things that I'm able to see back here that I never would have seen otherwise. Right? If I didn't let God, the idea is really, let's let God drive. Let's let God take control. And when we do that, we trust Him and we kind of sit a little further back. Man, there's things that we see, there's comfort that we experience that we wouldn't have otherwise been able to experience. And then on the other hand, because typically when we think of being backseat drivers, we think of people sitting in the back seat like nagging and nitpicking and correcting, right? Which is terrible. As somebody, again, who is terrible at that, I'm really actually good at it because I've practiced it a lot. I'll tell you this, like when I start backseat driving, whoever's driving, their driving doesn't typically improve, right? It just like saying all that stuff typically has the opposite effect, right? So here's the problem with actual backseat driving. When we slip into control mode instead of allowing God to lead, it never works, right? Oh, God, I trust you. Oh, but why? Right? We're leaning in and we're grabbing the wheel because it just never works when we do that. So I'm wondering today, if anyone here, and I already know the answer to this, if you've ever been in any of the following environments and thought to yourself, I know better than the professionals. All right, so look at this first environment. Have you ever been sitting at home by yourself with your family, with some of your friends, and you couldn't believe how bad the officiating was in that game? And you wondered how in the world anyone could miss what you had seen so clearly. Everybody? Is that everybody that's happened? You're like, actually, that happened yesterday, right? Like, it happens every time my team plays. Although, I just, like, this is a little bonus material. How is it, if it seems like the officiating is bad in our favor, we say things, oh, that's just home field advantage, or, you just got to play every play. But when it's bad against us, it's like there's a conspiracy, and it's just, can't believe it, right? So I think everyone has found themselves in an environment like that, right? And I think one of the reasons why it seems so easy to us and so difficult to the people actually officiating it is because they all have significant pressure, right? Like the weight of this decision fully and squarely on their shoulders to make. Where guess what? When we're sitting at home eating our hors d'oeuvres and watching the game, our thoughts and opinions have zero pressure and make zero difference, right? It's so much easier to see everything clearly when there's no pressure. I think that's one of the reasons. Now, how about this as another environment, similar but a little bit different? So let's look at this next image. Have you ever been in the stands, maybe even here in Loudonville, down at the high school or somewhere else, by yourself with your family, with some friends? And same thing, you couldn't believe the officiating was this bad. And you wondered how they could miss something that was so clear to you. Anybody? Yeah. So this is going to get funnier here in a second. We all have. Now, there's less of a pressure differential, especially if it's like high school sports, because if you're sitting in the stands and you're like yelling your opinion, it's not like being in a giant stadium with tens of thousands of people, right? Like people can hear you when you say things, so that puts a little bit more pressure back on us. But I think one reason why sometimes we feel like, how could I see this from the stands when the umpires or referees are right there on the court or the field or the whatever, and they don't seem to be able to see it, is this. Because many times you have a better perspective when you're a little further back. Isn't that true? When you don't just see like what's right there, but when you can see everything. We have better perspective. Now, just because that's true, Jeremy, that's still no reason to get ejected from a high school sports game. One of the few, if you would have asked me like 5 years ago who's more likely to get ejected from a sporting event, any member of the Patterson family or Jeremy, I would have probably said likely a Patterson, especially Bethany. She's pretty intense at sporting events. But poor Jeremy, nope. Had to listen to a game or two from your car, huh? Right outside the gym. Oh, it's so good. Okay, how about one more? Can we do one more? Okay, let's look at this one. Have you ever been in an environment like this? Right? And you're in this huge stadium. You're sitting, maybe you went by yourself, maybe again with your family or some friends, and you couldn't believe the officiating was this bad. How in the world could those guys not see all that stuff that was perfectly clear to you? Right? We all have. We've all done this. And so we have the pressure differential again, right? Because when there's 50 or 60 or 80,000 people and you're yelling something, nobody cares. Nobody really hears, right? There's also, you have the perspective of being back, sometimes way back, right? But you also have this other thing that we could really clearly see in that picture, right? It's the beauty of the Jumbotron. Isn't that great? So it's the best of all worlds. This is kind of the same with backseat driving. Think about it this way. Perspective is better from farther back, but being both near and far is the best. Make sense? Like our perspective is way better when we're back a little bit. We can see everything. But being close and far away is the ultimate. So, in a perfect world, being right on top of the action and having the benefit of being the kind of having a far back perspective and having razor sharp replay images from all angles would be the best. But we don't live in a perfect world, right? We don't have all that for our lives. So what do we do, and how does this impact what we are and what we should be absorbing? Jesus, I just pray today as we look at a couple scriptures and dig into them a little bit, that first of all, would you give us the gift of us having and being able to live with fewer delusions? The things that we think and the things that we allow to enter and even exist in our minds and sometimes trickle down to our hearts and even out into our lives that just aren't true at all. Take those things from us. May we have fewer of those. Give us better sight. Help us to see the truth more clearly. Give us a better perspective. And Jesus, may the ultimate fruit of today be that each of us would have a plan to know how to gain that sight and insight that you want to give to each and every one of us. We ask these things together in Jesus' name. Amen. So I want to look at just a few verses that the Apostle Paul wrote in his second letter to the church at Corinth. It's 2 Corinthians 4, verses 16, 17, and 18. And I want to think about these one at a time. So here's the first verse there. Therefore we do not lose heart, though outwardly we are wasting away, yet inwardly we are being renewed day by day. Now that's really interesting, isn't it? Is this really true that we do not lose heart when we start to notice that we are outwardly wasting away? Because I would say for most people this isn't typically true, right? When we have these sort of like my body, my stamina, my mind, my whatever is not what it once was, we don't typically go, hey, that's okay, right? Like we don't tend to have fuller hearts when we're confronted with those realities, right? Sometimes we do lose heart a little bit, don't we? I hear this, I see this. My prayer when Bethany and I met and got married was always, and we were like young, so we had, very few maladies or diminishments kind of at those super young ages. And my prayer was always, if we had kids, that our kids would get Bethany's eyesight and her joints. Because I knew then I had a bum knee. I had no idea about all the other joints that I'd have problems with. But that was my prayer. And for me, like when I was in high school, I started wearing glasses. Probably it's just because I had some vision check or went to the eye doctor for the first time in however many years, and likely needed them long before I had them. But I had glasses, and through college and in my early 20s, and I remember getting laser eye surgery. Best thing I ever did. I just hate playing golf or playing a sport. Sweating on my glasses just always drove me nuts, so I had that happen. My vision was decent, a little bit of kind of haloing at night, but kind of decent. And then I noticed, a number of years ago, when I was hunting, this is when I switched from a compound bow to a crossbow, because when it was dusky and I would draw my bow and try to look through that tiny peep sight and couldn't see anything anymore, I'm like, that probably doesn't work well, right? But the good news is Bethany, she's always been a ninja, right? I'm like, hey, babe, what does that sign say 4.3 miles from here? She's like, oh, it says, and she tells me. So even though my vision has been not the best, we've been able to tag team as a family to accomplish our goals. And in the last year, I started doing that, like, hey, look at this, and she would adjust where my hand was. And I, for a long time, didn't really say anything because I was afraid. And at one point, she's like, I scheduled a visit for the eye doctor, right? So now she has these little reading glasses, so I like to joke with her about, hey, who's the cute girl with glasses around our house? I haven't seen her before. But, so you get to a certain point, and even people that have, the best vision, it wastes away a little bit, yeah? And again, I have a bum knee. At 40, I got a total hip replacement. My surgeon thought 3 years to get the other hip done. It's been over 5 now, but that one's starting to hurt a little more. And the bum knee, they told me 4 or 5 years ago, hey, there's absolutely nothing we can do. Let's try to get you into your 50s before we replace it, right? So it's like, I have a whole bunch of, and then yesterday, you guys, some of you are like just rolling your eyes like, come on, like, man up a little bit. We need your man card. Others of you, I'm like speaking right to you. So yesterday, I literally was going to the theater for the second of this weekend's performances. I was there. Liam and I were there Friday. We were there last night. We're going this afternoon as well. If you haven't been to the show this weekend, it's at 2 o'clock today, last one, and it's awesome. And then next weekend is Elf the Musical on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So go to that too. But anyway, so I'm going to the theater, and I'm walking, and for whatever reason, like my ankle is just like exploding with pain for no reason. And I'm like hopping on one. I told Liam at one point he was going to have to carry me, right? Like it was, thankfully, thank you, Jesus, it's better this morning, and it's not. So I have no idea what was going on with my ankle for those limited hours. But I mean, so in the midst of all this wasting away, how do we not lose heart? That's a good question, right? Like, as we sort of grapple with this wasting away process that all of us experience, how do we not lose heart? Well, right before this passage, therefore, right, we do not lose heart. Well, what's it there for? When you go back, you see, like, they're talking about this idea of believing in the resurrection of Jesus, right? That Jesus rose from the dead, and because we believe in him, we too will experience resurrection as well. Right? And so one of the ways for us to not lose heart is for us to actually believe in the power of the resurrection. And not just as an intellectual thought, but as an experiential one that we all know that while we, in our lives, the older we get, we'll have various things that begin wasting away more and more, that we know that there's this resurrection and we will be perfected in glory, and we will be way better than we have ever been. How cool is that? Right? Some of you are like, again, right? It was what we do. Well, that sounds really good. I'm just not so sure I believe it. Right? Again, we think that it's true as an intellectual thing, but we need to believe it more experientially. And then we also need to allow this inner renewal that takes place to become more important in our lives than the external decay, right? Though we are wasting away outwardly, yet inwardly we are being renewed day by day. Isn't this incredible that God does this thing inside of us that is even more significant and important than the external stuff that diminishes? This is such good news. And I really do believe why this is important, right, is because if we didn't start wasting away at some point, we would long for here way more than we longed for heaven, right? This is God's way of helping us to see what he's doing inside of us and realizing that here becomes less and less our home over time. So if we want to see better, but our sight only diminishes, what do we do about that? One of my friends always says this: I ain't trying to live forever. Right? And I think, that's probably good. We probably shouldn't be trying to live forever, but that's also kind of a funny way, right, of kind of masking over I guess I don't want to live forever because my body's kind of, not what it once was. So here's how the text continues. For our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us an eternal glory that far outweighs them all. So cool. So our light and momentary struggles here is kind of a reference back to this wasting away that everyone experiences to a certain extent. I love what Jesus' brother James tells us in James chapter 1. Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, when you encounter trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith develops perseverance. Allow perseverance to finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. Isn't that awesome? Like these light and momentary troubles we experience here during this life are achieving for us this eternal glory, right? That far outweighs all these kind of temporary things that we've got to deal with and wrestle with in the here and now. We've talked about this over the years here at New Hope in a number of different ways. I've used this rope a number of times, right, where I have it like all the way backstage, and I'll pull it, and I'll pull it, and I'll talk about how there's like the beginning, which is this tiny little piece, and the end, and then there's just rope after rope after rope, and then like there's just this one little tape piece somewhere in this giant rope that seems endless. And it's just been a way that we've said, hey, this is what our life is like compared to eternity. Right? The Bible tells us this, right? Like that we are here today and gone tomorrow. We are like a mist or a vapor. And what God wants to do in this tiny experience that is our life, even if you live to be 150 years old, right? Even in this brief moment, what He's doing in this time is preparing us for it forever, right? And so that is unbelievably important. Now is nothing compared to eternity. So with this all in mind, a question: who or what are you willing to suffer for? It's a good question, right? For most of us, the answer, if we're just being completely honest, is like I might say, like I know what the right answers are, so I might say some things, but the truth is, for most people, they are willing to suffer for themselves. If it gets me further ahead, if it gets us some nicer things, whatever, I'm willing to suffer a little bit for that. But much beyond that, and most people opt out. Pastor Bud and I were sitting in a meeting this week with a CEO of a company that's just very, very successful. And this meeting was him talking all about how he could give away more money to different communities and regions. And he said this thing that was super impactful for me. He said, and again, this person I'm sure has earned enough money to be able to literally go and do and buy anything they want. Anything. And this person with that capacity said, giving money away is so much better than buying more stuff for myself. And I just remember sitting there, and this person knows and loves and believes in Jesus, but I just remember sitting there, and it was pretty awesome to hear someone like that say something like that. And then they elaborated. They said, I buy a new whatever, vehicle or this, that, or the next thing. It doesn't take too long where something's wrong, or it got a little chip here or a scratch there, or this is starting to wear out, or that's breaking, or whatever, right? So anything we do for us, like, is almost instantly deteriorating. But when we give it away in a way that blesses or changes realities for other people, that, is awesome. And so that blew me away, and I thought to myself, most people can see this intellectually. Most of us can see, just getting myself one more thing is not as important as using these resources God has entrusted me to make the world better. We can see that intellectually, but for most people, they don't do much testing of that out in real life. Let me actually give more away. Let me actually do more. What if Jesus could actually do this in us and to us, where all of us would say, hey, because of the things I've tried and because of the ways I've lived, maybe I have less cool, shiny things, but it's way better to give stuff away and see God use that than for me just to have one more shiny thing that just gets old from when it's brand new anyway. Think about this. What is one way that you can start living today to show that eternity is more important than right now? It's a good question, right? So maybe write that down. Maybe if you're with somebody here at church, ask that on your way home to each other. What's just one way? It doesn't have to be a big thing. It could be a tiny thing. What's just one way each of us could start living today that would show eternity is more important to us than the here and the now. All right, here's the last part of the passage. So, right, because of all this, because we're wasting away, but there's this internal thing happen, because of all these light and momentary troubles that are achieving this eternal glory that outweighs them, right? Because of this, so we fix our eyes not on what is seen, but on what is unseen, since what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal. Oh, for this type of sight. Wouldn't that be awesome? If we could see how all the stuff that fires us up here and now is so temporary. And all the stuff sometimes we don't even think about that is about forever is so significant and important. The gift of being able to see and live with eternity in mind, I just think is incredible. Matthew 6, verses 19 through 21 says this, "Do not store up treasure for yourself on earth where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven where moths and rust do not destroy and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." So where's our treasure? Where is our heart? So good, right? Do we really fix our eyes not on the things we can see and the people we can see and the places we can see? Do we really fix our minds and our thoughts and our lives on eternity? Or do we fix it on all the stuff we can see? Where's your treasure? Where's your heart? Let me ask it differently. Where do you find your dim eyes looking? It's like, I don't want to answer that question, right? For some of us, the answer to that is to things, right? Actually, probably all of us to a certain extent, right? So much so that we lose our minds at the idea that there's going to be less toys available this Christmas due to global supply chain shortages. Listen, Christmas is not, nor has it ever been, about giving kids gifts. And if having less presents that they're going to be super excited about one minute and are either going to be broken or forgotten about the next has been how you've typically celebrated Christmas, actually celebrating Christmas with kids and grandkids in a way that's more focused on Jesus and the best gift ever given, I think we'd all be way better off. Just my own little 2 cents. But we focus, right? We tend to, our dim eyes tend to look to things. Sometimes our dim eyes tend to look to us, right? Ourselves. My thoughts, my feelings, my desires. The problem, however, in looking to things or ourselves is that we are too close to both, and so we don't have a helpful perspective. I tell people this all the time. If I'm sitting with a person or a couple and I say something, they're like, "Wow, how did you know that?" And it's like, because I get to look at you from back here, right? Where for all of us, when we're looking at ourselves, we look at ourselves from right here. And we have no perspective on ourselves, on our relationships, on our situations. Sometimes we don't need the smartest person in the world to tell us something. We just need somebody who has a little bit of courage and a little bit of perspective, right? So for us, we're like, but this thing or that relationship or my belief here, right? These things are all so close to us, and we are wasting away right? So our vision's getting worse and worse, and yet we're getting more and more entrenched and passionate about what we think. Listen, you don't have the perspective you need, and I don't either. Or we can look to God, right? Our dim eyes can look more and more to God, who is the only one who makes sense for multiple reasons. Have you ever listened to yourself, or maybe like you're chasing a thing, and has anybody else, I'm just going to put my hand up now, has anybody else ever sabotaged yourself? Right? Oh, yeah, it's an emergency. It's an emergency. I need this. I want this. And so that one retirement account we've been saving in for the last 8 years, we could pay the penalty and we could pay the tax thing and we could just get access to that and we can do what we want. I know nobody else has ever done that. Right? Then you get to be a little bit older and you get to start looking at those numbers of the smaller amounts of money that have had to start adding up and building because you took a bunch of other things away, and you're like, I don't even remember what I spent that money on, but now those extra years or decades I'm going to have to work, I don't know how I feel about that, right? Come on, we sabotage ourselves for what we think is good and right and necessary now. Listen, God will never sabotage you like that. So let's look at our last verse from a different passage. You guys know this one. It's a very common, familiar, famous verse. Jeremiah 29:11 says this: "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future." So God, the one who has the best perspective and the best sight ever, has plans for you that provide prosperity, hope, and a future. This is what the one who has perfect vision and enough perspective to see everything, this is what he says. He has plans for you, for me, for us together, for us individually, for our families, and they're to provide prosperity, hope, and a future. There's a theological question that sometimes has been asked throughout history: is God immanent or is he transcendent? Right? Is he near or is he far? If you grew up watching Sesame Street, do you guys remember Grover did a thing about that? Right? Where he'd be he goes, "I am near." Right? And then he'd "Now I'm far." Right? And he'd do that, and at some point he'd be and near. Right? So he sort of did that thing. See, God isn't near and far because he runs back and forth. That's not how he does it. God is the only one who is both near and far. He's near and far all the time. He's in all places at once perfectly. And if we had to do that, and sometimes, you ever feel like you have to be in all places at once? When we feel that, what happens? We might be in a bunch of those places, but our minds are distracted, our eyes are, everything's distracted, right? Because we're discombobulated, because we're just doing too much. God is not only able to be everywhere perfectly, but he's also perfectly aware everywhere all at once. I once had someone say it like this, God exists outside of time and space and inside of time and space. So it's sort of like when we build something, with a kid's little train thing, and you kind of stand over it and you can see the beginning and the end and everything in between. Isn't it crazy to think about God existing outside of time and space and seeing the beginning and the end and everything, stuff that's come, stuff that's happening now, stuff that will happen in the future? It's mind-blowing to think about that. But that's the kind of perspective our God has. So with all this in mind, it would only make sense to us to trust only in a God who is both near and far. See, sometimes we want to say things to God like this. God, I would trust you, but you didn't see what I saw. And to that, God says, I did. I did see that. And I saw it with my perfect up-close sight, and also with the perspective that comes from every vantage point. God did see that thing that happened to you. Well, God, you might have seen it, but you didn't feel what I felt. And to that, God says, I do feel that, and I feel it with the depth of experience only possible by a perfect parent who knows you and loves you and who knit you together in your mother's womb and who has cared for you every single second of your life. God says, I saw that and I felt it. Well, God, you might have seen it and you might have felt it, but you haven't really walked in my shoes. And to that, God says, I have walked in your shoes. And in fact, I've carried you more than you've ever known that I've been carrying you. And because all this is true, just let me ask you again, look at our series graphic, absorption. What are you soaking in? So to all the backseat drivers here in the room, and I don't mean those of you who have chosen to slide back so you could have better perspective and a more relaxing ride. No. I'm talking about those of you who are legitimately in the back, but your skin's crawling and you're pointing out every kind of thought or correction that comes to your mind. Listen, will you sit back and watch instead of controlling? Crazy, right? If there's better perspective back there, will you sit back and watch instead of always trying to make outcomes? I know some of you are like, this is not fair. We ended Control Freak 2 weeks ago. You shouldn't talk about that 2 months in a row. If you want perspective and you want to soak in the right things, sometimes we got to sit back instead of controlling. And then will you trust and soak in a God who has the best sight and perspective of all? See, you can get back a little bit, and that's good, but God is better, and in fact, God is the best. Will you trust Him and soak Him in because He has the best perspective of all? So the question I want to ask today, that I want you to respond to kind of in your mind and in your heart and with your life is this. Will you move back? And will you yield control? Will you move back? Will you become a backseat driver intentionally? Will you shift to the backseat? Will you let God control? I remember as a kid, I wasn't that young, but my mom said, hey, Rob, I don't think it's a good idea for you to be friends with so-and-so. And because I was a kid and because I thought, well, someone's got to love and believe in that person, I thought my mom was crazy. And I continued to be friends with that person. And I just want you to know from the hindsight of years, my mom was right. She saw things from a little bit further back and from a little bit better sight that I was not able to see as a kid right on top of a relationship and situation. Listen, for all of us, man, sometimes we think we know, and we might know, but we don't even know close to what our God knows. Will you move back and will you yield control today? Jesus, I want to thank you so much for these simple but powerful truths that when we're further back, we can see more of the playing field. And God, you have that ultimate vantage point of up close and further back. And so as we take another step in this series, help us to soak in, to absorb more of you. And God, may we live in the power and in the blessing of just knowing that you are better. You haven't diminished since all the stuff you did in the scriptures. You are better. You are just as good as you've always been. You can be with us in fiery furnaces and in lions' dens. And so, God, today we invite you to do this in our lives. We ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
I've been here before, my heart feels so weak. Got this weight upon my chest and I can't stop forgetting, my God, that you never left. You're right here with me. Still, I'm convinced you're hiding. Oh God, would you remind me that you're still just as good as when I met you. You're still just as kind. Don't let me forget that you're still the same God that led me through the fire. You're still the same God who said still just as good as when I met you. You're still just as kind. Don't let me forget that you're still the same God that led me through the fire. You're still the same God who separates the waters. Come do what only you can do. God, I need you. Oh, and I will build an altar, stack it stone by stone. 'Cause every Ebenezer says I've never been alone. My faith will surely falter, but that don't change what you've done. 'Cause every Ebenezer points to where my help comes from. And I will build an altar, stack it stone by stone. 'Cause every Ebenezer says I've never been alone. My faith will surely falter, that don't change what you've done. 'Cause every Ebenezer points to where my help comes from. 'Cause every Ebenezer points to where my help comes from. You're still just as good as when I met you. You're still just as kind. Don't let me forget that you're still the same God that led me through the fire. You're still the same God who separates the water. Come do what only you can do. Oh, come do what only you can do. And I will build an altar and stack it stone by stone. 'Cause every Ebenezer says I've never been alone. My faith will surely falter, but that don't change what you've done. 'Cause every Ebenezer points to where my help comes from. Oh, every Ebenezer points to where my help comes from. Amen. Such a good song. It's so easy to forget, isn't it? I every time I've been working on this song and singing along with it, just the lyrics just cut right into me, because it's what we do. Everything's great. We remember God when things are going well, and then as soon as things start going south, we forget how good He is and how He has come through in the past, and we think, oh, He's left me. He's not here anymore. But that's not true. He's the same God all the time. He's unchanging. And sometimes we just need to take proactive steps to keep from forgetting. Like the song talks about, building these altars, these stone. They used to build these stone altars in places to remember what God did there. And maybe we need to do things like that. Maybe you need to use the sponge that we passed out last week. As Rob said, we've got more of those. If you want one, you can get it. Find Shelly and she'll get you one. But maybe you need to use the little sponge as like an altar. Put it somewhere where you're going to see it. And not only can it remind you that you are a sponge and we need to be soaking up positive things, but it can also remind you of God's goodness and how He comes through and He doesn't leave us. So we'll leave you with that today. Amy wants to remind you of some things, including the blood drive.
I was bullied into it, but I'll do it. Hey, the angel tree is out in the lobby, so if you haven't participated in that any of the years we've done it, this is the year to do it. There's coats and toiletries and all that kind of stuff on the tags back there. So all the information for that is in the scoop. And then also our blood drive is this coming Wednesday from 1 to 7. And an incentive, we always talk about how it's not about what you get, but this time you get one thing and maybe two. You're going to get a $10 Amazon gift card via email after you donate. And then also we're going to raffle off an Apple Watch. And the Apple Watch, it's not for Northern Ohio. It's not a raffle for Ashland County. It's just a raffle for those that sign up and show up here on Wednesday. So one lucky donor on Wednesday is going to get an Apple Watch. You can do with it whatever you want. If you want to give it to Christmas, if you want to give it to Rob, whatever you want to do, have at it. But anyway, so please sign up. We need your blood. I know I harp on that every time we have a blood drive, but we are in desperate need of blood products. If the schedule is full out there where you have availability to come, just come. I'll get you in. Just show up to donate. All right, have a great week.